This week on Diaspora Life Show, we bring you memories of the late second president of Kenya, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who was laid to rest recently. And to do that, we feature one of the persons that played the role of Moi on TV. And that is Walter Mong'are of the Ridiculous fame. Walter talks at length about what that role meant to him and what the legacy of Moi means to him and Kenyans at large. Welcome to the show.
So to me, Mzee Moi is not only special in my life, but he's a landmark in my life that shaped everything that I am today. Shaped the way I do things, shaped my connection with you as audiences and you as diaspora. Mainly because, one, he allowed me to do the unthinkable in a time where everybody was terrified by him, by his administration, by his way of leadership. But he allowed us as young people, Tony, KJ, and I, to just do a show around him in a time where you would not even imagine the late president. It was even termed as treason to imagine him. So I kept on wondering, how did the CID then, NIS then, how did they know you're imagining? You know, so those are some of the things that I remember about that time. And at the same time also, you know, putting in mind that, as Chris, you said earlier, one, we may like or dislike him. But when you're a head of state, you've got a huge responsibility over millions of people. And so decisions you'll make sometimes are not necessarily going to be favorable to everybody. And woe unto you as a leader if you can't make decisions at all. So I think for me, the former president, who, God rest his soul, led a country for 24 years, a very long period. We may call it dictatorial, we may call it any style, but let me tell you something, leadership is God ordained, and therefore I want to believe that he was there and he was a leader at a time as such a then for the sake of the country.
For most of us who grew up in the days of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, we remember what he taught us, and that's dignity within ourselves. He taught us what it means to be African and to be proud as Africans. That's something, when I was back in Kenya, I didn't know what that meant, but now I know. Living in a country that is so segregated and so racially charged like America, I understand exactly what that means. But beyond that, yeah, it was like we said, you're on a flash tour of the North America. Please, again, briefly just speak to us about your mission right now in the US.
As I joined the Kenyans in Canada to celebrate the life of Mzee Moi. I also had an opportunity to attend a function at City Hall in Toronto, commemorating the Black history. I also had an opportunity to do the same, celebrating the Black History Month of February at the African Museum at downtown Washington, D.C. And at the same time, I had an opportunity to pass by and say hi to an old friend, that is Chris, and a guy who has seen me grow, in the diaspora quarters, who has seen us walk in this journey for the last 20 years. And that is why he comfortably thinks I'm more of a diasporan than back at home, which I appreciate. And at the same time, I've got a couple of meetings at the UN headquarters, because Kenya is a member of the UN family, and so there are so many global decisions that are being made that affect the Kenyans, that affect our young people. And it's also important to note that our president Uhuru Kenyatta, is a global champion for young people's agenda, which is a program or a forum that brings up around world leaders in deliberating issues of young people with an intention of inspiring their dreams, inspiring their growth, and also giving them an opportunity to voice their challenges, which now we begin to turn into value.
That's very important. And again, like I said, nobody is uniquely positioned to understand the diaspora and the intersection between the diaspora and at home than you, because you've been practically every corner of the world. Right now, you are in charge of the youth program in the Office of the President in Nairobi. As you speak to the leadership of the country, how do you see the understanding of the role that the diaspora plays in development beyond just remittances?
Chris, one of the biggest value that we find in you as our Kenyan ambassadors beyond the borders of Kenya is exposure. There is no better value of change than an exposed mind, than a renewed mind, than a mind that has tested the home life and experiences and has tested another life elsewhere, just to know that life can actually change and things can actually be better. So for me, as Walter, first, I appreciate that the diaspora are our ambassadors out here. And I also appreciate that the diaspora contain a very critical ingredient of our development back at home, and that is exposure to a different ways of looking at things or doing things. And therefore, it makes me make the conclusion that when people talk about the return of the diaspora, when people talk about remittance beyond just, being called a diaspora, you run an entire economy. If you look at the statistics in the last 2 years, having sent in an excess of 200 billion shillings back at home in terms of remittance, and that is subsistence money. That's not development money as such. You almost contribute to a third of the GDP of the country, or the total budget of the country. And therefore, you're not only our ambassadors out here, you're not only our exposed workforce that is out here, you're also an economic power. And it's time you started looking at yourself as so.
That's very, very important. Beyond just, again, that role, I know you've gone around the diaspora, and you are a talented person, and you're very quick to identify talent. In fact, before we started recording this, we were discussing about the show that you're planning to start beginning July. A show that identify also talent within the diaspora, because one of the disadvantages that we have as a diaspora is the fact that apart from just the schedules and people being busy, we also don't have, as it is right now, we don't have a program that just collectively identify the talent that is within the diaspora. And you'll agree with me that there's a lot of talent that you've noticed the many times that you've come and left. Can you please just briefly speak about that?
The Kenyan diaspora and the Kenyan, the African people of the Kenyan descent are extremely hardworking and valued across the country and across the globe. One because of their education level, two because of their resilience, three because of their work hard ethics. Because of those three ingredients, the Kenyans are attractive to any investor. And so what I've seen in the last couple of years, engaging with you and going around and hanging out with you out here, is that there's generally adaptability of any Kenyan in any situation and any environment is extremely commendable. And so one of the things that I've seen in life is the aspect, as you say, Chris, talent identification. Majority of us, if somebody didn't walk to you and told you that, look, I think you can do this, we wouldn't be doing what we do.
That's right.
Now, I'm a typical example of somebody walked to me, and I must always give credit where it's worth. A gentleman called Patrick Kwaku a couple of years ago walked to me and told me, I think you can make a great radio host. And I went on to have the best radio show with Caroline Mutoko for close to 10 years. A gentleman called Bob Nyanja, who was from South Carolina, came back home and they said, I think I've seen what you can do. And if we package this and put it out there, it will be something else. So until somebody walks to you, Chris, until somebody tells you, listen, you have something that is unique, you have something that if we exploit it, it will, one, have economic value for you, and at the same time, it will impact positively on others and inspire others. We rarely allow that to happen. And so that is why, as you said, maybe it's time we started talking to you as an individual, you as a diaspora Kenyan, at an individual level, and start to look at what is it that you have that can be of benefit to yourself and the rest of the country on a transformational scale.
Are you ready for the Diaspora Life Show launch and States tour? Live from Delaware, from June 6 to 26 September, we'll stream live from 20 different states and cities. From Boston, Baltimore, Atlanta, Montreal. Come and get informed of the different investment opportunities from Kenya. More info on the Standard Digital Videos website. Diaspora Live Show, every Saturday at 7:40 p.m. on Standard Digital Videos platforms.
That's very important, and it's my pleasure to be a part of this. I'm very excited about the prospect of going around the globe with you to identify talent within the Kenyan community living away from home. Before we go, I know you're pressed for time, Walter. You worked in the county in Kisii for some time. You're in charge of the diaspora program also. Kenyans are right now, Kenyans living abroad right now are very interested in investing back at home. Which areas do you see, or did you realize that many Kenyans living abroad are interested in? Which areas of investment are they more interested in?
When it comes to investment, and when it comes to one's choice to put their money where they want to put it, it's a personal intuition. It's not a perceived, it's not a trendy approach to investment. And I think we want to slowly, Chris, move away from being trendy in terms of investment.
That's right.
and banking more on what you call easily bankable projects that are long-term in nature. Talking about real estate, it's excitable. You've seen what has happened. Talking about land, talking about, we need to invest in this. It's cliche in my opinion. What I'm thinking is, and I want to encourage all of us, we need to invest in a country from a system perspective, from a leadership perspective, from capacity building of institutions of leadership and institutions of government. And I think that is the biggest value that we can give the country, if at all we want to safeguard our entrepreneurial investments.
Yes.
You want to put land, it can only be supported by legislation and regulations that support your investment. You want to put up a business, a mall, it has to be guided by a policy framework that is sound, that is solid, that is long-term. So I'm thinking, as we continue to have this conversation, Chris, because this is not the last one, is we need to start reevaluating what is it that we call investment, what is it that we put our money on. The rest can always keep going, but what is the biggest investment we can do? And I think the biggest investment I can ask you, Chris, is one, I think we need you as diaspora back at home. As we conclude, and thank you, Chris, for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts and my presence with our great Kenyans in diaspora, particularly in the North American region. I just want to say thank you. And the show that you're talking about, it's not so much about a show, but an opportunity to begin to tell our story that is positive. As you can see, I carry the brand that is Kenya Film Classification Board, and majority of you know our CEO and the board, of course, Ezekiel Mutua, as a moral police, as a guy who's out there to protect the values of the country and the moral values. And one of the things as a brand for KFCB, one of the things that we want to do is we want to inspire you. We want to tell the stories that are positive, because our media and our outlets are full of negativity and we're not inspiring anyone. We are so full of negative content, and you do know that whatever you watch, whatever you hear is what you become. And so this will be an opportunity, Chris, for us to tell the story of diaspora, and as they make plans to return back home, to tell positive stories of Kenyans living abroad and who have made tremendous and remarkable contribution to where they live and back at home, and also start to have content that is positive, that is inspirational, that at the end of the day gives hope to our young people. Kwa hayo machache na mengine mtasoma kwenye magazeti. Mungu awabariki. The legacy of Mzee Moi will forever live with us. Thank you.
May his soul rest in peace. That brings us to the end of our show today. Join us again next week as we bring you stories from the diaspora. My name is Chris Omalwa. Remember to drop us a line at Diaspora Life Show at standardmedia.co.ke. Of course, you can watch this show again on YouTube and also online on Standard Digital videos, and also we're on Facebook. See you again next week.
Are you ready for the Standard Digital Videos Diaspora Live Show official launch and 20 States Roadshow? We will be live in Newark, Delaware on June 6th. On June 13th, we'll be headed to Allentown, Pennsylvania. We'll make our way up north to New Haven, Connecticut on June 20th. On June 27th, we'll be in the Charm City, Baltimore, Maryland. And on the 4th of July, we'll be in Raleigh, North Carolina. So gear up, and for more information, visit all Standard Digital Media platforms. Don't miss out.